Is Jokic too high, too low, just right? What about Aaron Gordon? And hey, MPJ is actually on the list, which surprised me. We'll do all that and more today on Locked On Nuggets. Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Glad to have you with us. Joining me today, Seth Partnow of The Athletic. He's here to talk about his Tiers project he does every season. Several Nuggets on the list. We'll go over all of those players that are on the list, the players that did not make the list, the players that could be on the list. We'll talk about the structure and how he formats those types of things. All that and more on today's show. I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can join the show and talk to us live, and we'll get to your comments as we go through the show. Seth, my friend, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. There's the commentariat has noticed that I am not Adam.
They have noticed that you are not, in fact, Adam Mares, that you are, in fact, Seth Partnow.
Just as good. I'm just as good, really.
In many ways, I would say better. That's just
No.
my person. No, I'm not. I'm just kidding. I love Adam. I love Adam. It is nice to talk about something where I don't have to couch. I don't have to be afraid of saying negative things about Faco Composite with you. So anyway, let's talk about your Tiers project. So over at the Athletic, you published your annual list of where the guys fit into the tiers. For those that are uninitiated with and unfamiliar with the project, can you explain real briefly why you opt for tiers instead of the traditional let's rank everybody?
So rankings are good for picking fights on the internet and basically nothing else.
Right.
I think that sort of is he's seventh or eighth is sort of okay. They're close enough that you're flip a coin, and especially at the NBA level, a lot of it when players are close like that, a lot of how quote good they are is situational. Are they in the right teammates, right scheme? Are they healthy? Like all these things sort of play much more into kind of who is having a better season than who is a better at basketball. So the step one of why tiers is to have, to say, okay, these are players that are relatively equal, and you might have a preference for one over the other, a slight preference, but at a certain level, you'd feel about the same. The next group down, you feel a little worse about, and so on down the line. The other part of it is did some historical research a number of years ago, just kind of the number of players who kind of hit certain levels of production and what those levels of production mean for a team's title chances. And it's sort of to fight against the tendency of there being who's your top five. 17 guys later, you've named your top five.
Right.
It's the top 3, 5, 7 guys are materially better, especially with respect towards winning a championship, than guys 8 through 20, who are materially better than guys 20 through 45, and so on down. So being really kind of strict about as I put in the write up number of times, like when in doubt, push him down, because I think that on some level, that's me being contrarian. On some level, it's me sort of consciously pushing back on the optimism bias we all tend to have that everyone's great. So that's at how long did that take me? At 90 seconds, that's describing the idea behind the tiers. And finally, the last thing I'll say is it's specifically through the lens of drop this guy into a role that he would likely be title contending team.
Yeah.
How much would he help? So there are like if you're doing it's a very different list than you might get if who can take a 40 win team and make them a 52 win team versus who can take a 50 win team and make them a championship team. Those are somewhat different questions, and a lot of the disagreements with the tiers are I'm rating kind of floor raisers probably lower than you might if you were because of the specific lens I'm looking at it.
Yeah, and then you're right up on the top tiers. And spoiler alert, Jokic is at the top. You kind of go into the idea of like pushing back on some of the criticisms of Jokic as a playoff performer. I don't want to get into them because I just think that they're the dumbest thing imaginable. Where I'm like, he literally has outperformed expectations in the playoffs every year. It's just I don't know where this
playoff performance is basically unimpeachable as far as I'm concerned. Like, oh, he's gotten beat on defense while carrying a 35 usage against the other best players on his team.
Right. Right.
And that means what?
No problem. Happens. So let's go ahead and get to the tiers, which is Nikola Jokic at the top is actually the first name on the list, though it's not obviously not ranked. It's tiered. The top tier is Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Stephen Curry, and Kevin Durant. 1B, that's 1A's. 1B is Embiid and Luka. 1C is Kawhi, obviously missed last year with the injury, and LeBron, facing all the things that LeBron is dealing with. So I wanted to ask you this question because I did when I was on the plane to Carolina. I did this thing. I went through the mental exercise of being like, who are the best offensive engines in the league? Like, all right, we're just gonna run everything through them. Like, they're the focal point. They are the one that's gonna create everything, right? And like, where do these other guys fit? And when I started to kind of analyze it, 2-3 years ago, not even 2 years ago, I would have had LeBron top tier. I would have had him number one, with a bullet, maybe some other guys next to him. My list currently, I have Jokic on a separate tier. I just have him on a tier by himself at the top. I don't know that I can think of any offensive engine through one singular player, right? Because I think the Warriors are a fair estimate. If you want to put Steph there, I'm not going to argue with it. I don't agree, but we can put him there. I think if with Steph, you need Draymond and you need Kerr's system. With LeBron, I think you need shooters and you need some talent around him at this point in his career because he's 38 years old. And you need a couple years back. Yeah, he's 38. Yeah. Kawhi is very much like a universe. He's like a sub-universe unto himself, and good teams like the Raptors and the Clippers have built kind of, I think, kind of put him in his own universe and then built around him and into a greater kind of galaxy structure or whatever, however you want to say it. And then, Embiid, I think, is close to that level. I think with how he played last year, I think he's really close to that level. Luka, I'm expecting to get to that level this season, but for my investment purposes, I don't know that there's a better offensive engine for any team in the league than Nikola Jokic. Would you agree with that or no?
I think that's a reasonably fair statement. I think that at this point, Steph is probably the and I think you discussed that. But I mean, I think the differentiating between you want to differentiate between him and Embiid, it's the playmaking. You want to differentiate between him and Luka, it's the efficiency. So there's nobody who has that elite high usage efficiency plus really central playmaking role on their team. And that's part of what makes Jokic so hard to really wrap your arms around is like we've seen players who point guard and from a wing position. We've never really seen someone do that hub from the center position in anything resembling modern times.
Yeah, and that being unique, I think you're right. It's hard to kind of like encapsulate him into and fit him into the other structures. I am curious, did you receive a lot of pushback for putting Jokic in that top tier this season?
Actually, I received a lot more pushback for putting KD up there than anything else.
Yeah.
And KD and I'll be honest, I there's a little bit of KD getting a mulligan for having just hell season. He's 11, the best player in the world, quite clearly. So, he gets a little bit of a pass. That Bucks series last year was, the word transcendent gets thrown around perhaps too lightly. But if we're not going to use it for that, what are we using it for? And so, I mean, basically beat, a eventual title team with Blake Griffin and some guys. And what more do you need?
So if we look at Jokic obviously in this tier and be in this level, the only other question I kind of got for you before we move on to some of the other guys is, did you ever expect, if I told you 3 years ago that Nikola Jokic would be 1A, would you have been surprised, or would you have been like, okay, I can see how he got there. Must have been an incredible leap, but how surprised are you to find Jokic at this 1A level?
as a little bit, like there's 2 years ago, I was like, okay, well, he hasn't shown consistently the ability to be like that mid-30s usage guy. And then he did that for a year. It's like, okay, he's not going to be as good as he was last year. And then he did that. So it's sort of like, okay, these things that I don't think he can do that he would need to do to get there, and he's kind of like, oh no, got that, check. And that's sort of the progression from like tier 2 to tier 1 to lower tier 1 to tier 1A is sort of been him just saying, nope, got that. Like, anything else? What's next?
Yeah.
Like win defensive player of the year, but that's like he's so good offensively that's superfluous.
Yeah, he'll take it next season. I think if his production and his usage kind of drops down a little bit with the return of hopefully a healthy Jamal Murray and hopefully a healthy Michael Porter Jr. I am curious from your perspective if he takes a dip based off of those factors, but the Nuggets win success goes up and his efficiency remains stable. What's that going to do to him on the tiers list? Like, do you have to reduce him if his usage decreases? No. Okay.
No. I think that's that. Like, again, you can. There's calories he's getting because he has to, because no one else is going. I don't feel like he's. If Jamal Murray comes back and is averaging 24 and Jokic is, per game drops a little, or his per minute drops a little, so like, well, he played worse. No, he was throwing the ball to the other really good guy, and that works too. And we're trying to win, not maximize my fantasy points.
Right. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about the other Nuggets that are on the list, including Jamal Murray, who still clocks in, Michael Porter Jr., and Aaron Gordon, all on the list. We'll do that when we come back with Seth Partnow from The Athletic. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, it's that time, guys. Yes, it's that time. It's time for Built Bar. If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you're depriving yourself of one of life's great joys. And the new flavor is absolutely outrageously good. Delicious, indulgent cookie dough covered in chocolate. That's right, Built's done it again. The new favorite, the cookie dough chunk puffs. They're absolutely incredible. This is one of my favorites. I have gone through the entire test box already. I only got it a little while ago. They have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it, and it's healthy for you. They're only 160 calories, and they've got a whopping 15 grams of protein. They use collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. You're going to get to eat something that tastes good and is good for you. Run to Built.com and snag a box for you and the family. It'll be the perfect treat, or just find yourself a hiding place and keep it all for yourself. Like all the Built Bars, the new cookie dough chunk puff is covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and tasty. Chocolate-covered cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture. So good. If you're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff, whether you need a snack for your workout, a late-night treat, or just need to grab a quick bite, grab yourself a Built Bar. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15, LOCKEDU15, for 15% off your order at Built.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Really appreciate you guys. Thanks for making us your first listen. Make sure you check out the YouTube channel. Best way for you to join and support the show. You can join folks like Moon Nugget and Peter Plummer and Zamora's in here, and Hurricane's always banging with us. CJ wants some props from me on betting. I'll cover that on tomorrow's show, CJ. And lots of other guys and folks in the comments section. Back here with Seth Partnow from The Athletic. So Seth, obviously last year it was hard to find other guys that were going to be on any sort of tier for the Denver Nuggets given their injury woes and how much that pushed everybody down. Aaron Gordon had to play essentially as the second best player on a team, which that was not what he intended when he agreed to a trade to the Denver Nuggets and re-signed there. Monte Morris starts, Bones Highland goes into a reserve role. But you thankfully have not just, I think probably rightfully have not just completely excluded the guys that were on the list that were injured last season. Obviously, Kawhi still ranks in very high in the top tier, rightfully so. So tier 3A, is Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, Bam Adebayo, Chris Middleton, and Kyrie Irving. That is like a dynamite list of players. You got like Drew, who is absolutely a winner, is a championship level point guard. Jaylen Brown had himself an absolutely phenomenal season and almost won a championship despite not being able to dribble. Bam Adebayo, I think, was the best defensive player in the league last season, made the Eastern Conference Finals. Chris Middleton, he doesn't suffer the MCL injury. Maybe the Bucks go back to back. Kyrie exists, and then so that's like 3A. Those are a bunch of like really high level players. 3B, your 3B list leads with Jamal Murray. He's on the 3B list. And among the other players in the 3B tier are DeMar DeRozan, Donovan Mitchell, Pascal Siakam, Zach LaVine, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Draymond Green. That's absolutely a phenomenal list of players. Like, that's multiple All-Stars, and that's focal points of offense, and that's a bunch of guys that have made hundreds of millions of dollars. Draymond's a guy that's won a championship. Siakam won a championship. What was the kind of thought process for Jamal ranking in amongst a bunch of guys that have been all-stars more than once in some cases, and Jamal never having kind of reached that level? Why did Jamal rank in the 3A tier?
Sorry, I cut off for a second, but you're asking why I had him in 3B and what we'd have to do to go up to 3A?
I'm asking more of like, that's an impressive list for 3B. Like you're higher, you're higher on Jamal than I would, honestly. Like I wouldn't have Jamal amongst these type of players, DeMar and Zach LaVine and Pascal. What was your thought process in Jamal earning that right to be amongst these guys that already have an all-star reputation?
I mean, I think it's a combination of sort of his play in the bubble and the fact that someone put in the comments the bubble is real. I don't actually believe that. I think we've seen enough. Anthony Davis says hello and his jump shot says goodbye, but he continued that before he got hurt last season. The Nuggets were the best team in basketball, and he was, Jokic is playing at MVP level, certainly part of that, but Jamal Murray playing at an all-star level, playing at that level of really high level secondary shot creator, shot maker, like late clock defense, like breakdown a defense guy. So maybe I'm projecting that forward a little bit and hoping we see that guy back as much as it being a prediction. But if we see that guy again, I think he fits perfectly well into that group of players.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting kind of idea, right? Where it's almost like you're not going to punish him for missing time with the injury. He's going to have to, like, he likely comes back worse and likely, like, I would expect him to be 3C, 3, or maybe 4A next season based off of coming back from an ACL injury. But I like the process of essentially saying, look, I'm not going to drop him because I can't say that he's going to be worse just because... Yeah. He should be worse, and maybe he gets back there, and based off of like the player he can be, he is at this kind of level.
And missing the full year, he's probably ACL is a 2-year injury. We see guys, they come back the first year, they're not as good. I've talked to medical people who say, why are we having them come back the first year?
Yeah.
Just because what happens is there's the component of, am I going to hurt myself every time I put this foot down? And then if a player gets more comfortable with their own body, they can, get back to playing, quote, right. And so he probably is skipping some of those reps of having the tentativeness. So I think that, I think I will, like, as you say, I probably will grade on less of a curve this year because he had that year off. If he was playing the next year after it, I would definitely kind of grain of salt the performance a little more.
MPJ comes in as a 4B. He was a 4B last season, so he doesn't suffer any sort of absence. Again, we're talking about a lot of really good players in this tier. You got Cade Cunningham comes in as a 4B. Josh Giddey, DeAndre Hunter, who I think is a really good player. De'Aaron Fox, who's, obviously a focal point of Sacramento's endeavors. Lonzo Ball, John Collins, who I'm irrationally high on. Tyrese Halliburton, that a lot of people love. Kristaps Porzingis, Gary Trent Jr., Kyle Lowry. Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. both come in as 4Bs in this category. Let's start with MPJ. I assume that most of this is built off of he's got much the same way that I look at it, where it's like he's got too much potential for me to put him lower, but there's too many issues with both his game and his health for me to put him higher. How do you possibly? I'm surprised that he was even included in this list given his situation. How did you come to a conclusion on where MPJ fits?
I mean, on some level, I'm assuming health. So that's that, with that assumption, I think that the offensive game is what it is. But at the same time, even assuming health, the defensive game is what it is too. And so that's sort of what keeps him out of, like, the line between tier 4 and tier 3 is sort of the line at which role players shall not cross. And so some of the guys in 4A are the elite role players, the Mikal Bridges, the Dorian Finney-Smith, those guys in the league. And I don't think MPJ is quite on that level because in part he doesn't have the ball in hands creation, and then obviously the defense
Yeah.
are things that are, if he had more with the ball in his hands. He struggled when he played most of that season. He played on the baseline, attacking offensive rebounds, attacking out of the corners. When after Murray got hurt and he moved to the top of the floor, he struggled. And I think that's, that ability to make plays from that area of the floor is kind of the thing that takes you from a tertiary offensive weapon to a primary or secondary. And he's got to show much more in that area to move up. But at the same time, he's a 6'11" guy who's one of the elite shooters in the league right now.
Yeah, I think looking at kind of your list, the 3C list is where I kind of could see him if he has a really strong bounce back season, which I don't know what to expect from him next season. I don't know what's going to happen. There's all these things. But we look at like 3C, like Ben Simmons is a 3C. Obviously, like a lot of context on that one. But like LaMelo Ball, right, is does good secondary creator, good defender. Towns, elite offensive weapon, but defensively he's a weak point and sometimes is kind of a space cadet. Anthony Edwards, CJ McCollum, another kind of guy, offense only. So there's that 3C kind of range is like very flawed, high skill players. And so I could definitely see like MPJ, if he has a really strong season, I could honestly see him moving into being worthy at least of consideration for 3C next season. From you, is that too high? Am I too optimistic?
I think that involves it might be even tough for him to have the season to do that, because I don't know if he's going to have the usage. That he's been a low 20s guy, right? And he'd have to get up and is there enough ball to go around on this Nuggets team for him to be if he's an efficient 28 usage guy, yeah. But it's hard for me to have a non-defending, non-playmaking 22 usage guy as on that star level, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I'm as somebody that runs a Nuggets podcast and obviously thinks that you're always going to think that guys are better on the team that you cover. It's just a natural thing, and I try and fight against it, but it's a thing that happens. Having Aaron Gordon 4B, that was another thing where I was like, oh wow, I if you had asked me if he was on the tiers, I would have probably guessed a little bit no from you. What was the thought process being like Aaron Gordon needs to be he grades out well enough to be on the tiers list at all, and let alone in a 4B format? What are the things that you think that he really brings to the table that put him on that list?
So I think that in the write-ups, I kind of had a group of players that I called the connectors, which are guys who can do some of this, some of that, do it all pretty well. And I think he sort of naturally falls into that, being, a larger switchable defender, can score a little, isn't a non-shooter, can need some, can rebound, can play make. These are him as the fourth best guy on a team is an absolute perfect role for him. Now, did he do it as well as say an Andrew Wiggins did for the who played a similar role for the Warriors? No, but it's not a chasm. How much worse are the Warriors if you swap those two? I think they're worse, but I don't think it's a chasm of a downgrade. And so those are the kind of players who he's better than just he's pretty good. He's a guy, which is sort of the tier 5. Yeah. He's more impactful than that. Maybe as a second best player on our team, he struggles. The question from Hurricane is explain the difference between an elite role player and a connector. It's similar things. The elitist role players, I guess, tend to be the 3-and-D archetype.
Yeah.
So again, that's this year, that's the Danny Green Memorial slot essentially is this last year would have been Bridges and Finney-Smith and Wiggins and OG Anunoby, I think, were the kind of the players I had slotted into that kind of role. It's like that, but maybe a little more on the ball, but a little bit less in terms of just the shooting and the defense.
Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, by the way, comes in at 5A. That sounds about right for him. He's in there with guys like Reggie Jackson, Robert Covington, Spencer Dinwiddie, Harrison Barnes. So pretty good company in terms of the high-level, high-floor role player I think that you're looking for. Last one before we go to break. Seth, I did want to ask you, is there a Nugget that you think will probably wind up on this list next year that you think will make the tiers? And the two candidates out... I was just gonna say. What about Bruce Brown? And
he was literally our mutual friend Jared Dubin has already yelled at me.
I was gonna wonder if how Jared hasn't just absolutely railed on you about it.
He did. He was on my podcast and spent the first 15 minutes of it like yelling at me for not. And if I'm honest, we can keep this a secret between friends. There was a player who I left on tier 5 who I kind of wanted, that I decided to just duck a punch and put him on there.
Sometimes it's easier to just not take the abuse. I think that makes a lot of sense. Do you think Bones Highland, if he has a real strong
Lakers, and he may have played for a lot of different.
Do you think if Bones Highland has a
really it's funny. I cut out right as out.
You go.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. One more time. I'm sorry.
You're okay. I was just gonna ask if you think Bones Highland can make the list next year.
I love Bones Highland. Is there enough opportunity for him to do enough? That's sort of, is there enough opportunity? And is he, like, frankly, is he for whatever he gives off offensively, is he a passable enough defender that he's not like a target in the playoffs? And I think that maybe didn't show up as much as it might have this year, because there were sort of like, look around and who do we go at? Yes, with who the Nuggets had available in the playoffs this past year. But I do think that unless he's significantly better defensively, like, he's going to get the Jordan Poole treatment.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's take a break. We'll come back, and I want to ask Seth about what he thinks of the Nuggets going into next season. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. All right, final segment here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Thanks for making us part of your day and your first listen. You can join the chat on YouTube with folks like Hurricane and Moon Nugget. Lots of comments going on. Zamora's in there banging around. Got lots of comments. Peter Plummer's in there offering good things, good thoughts on the team and where they're at. We're back here with Seth Partnow from The Athletic. So, Seth, we've kind of gone through the players on the tiers, and the Nuggets have quite a few guys that are going to rank on this list. They're going to slot somewhere into those top 5 tiers. You've got Jokic, Murray, MPJ, Gordon, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and you expect Bruce Brown to be on there next year. That's 6 guys, pretty good for a team, especially with the number 1 kind of option. So I always kind of try and have a little bit of reserve about the Nuggets because I cover them. And last season I was like, I think they can win the championship. And I don't know if you know that did not happen because of a number of bad events that occurred. But look, it's clear that they are setting up for this season, and they have the same injury concerns that I think everybody has, and maybe a little bit greater because of the guys that they have, some of the risks that they have. But I will ask you, I kind of project this. I think this is going to be a top 5 offense. I think that the floor for the Nuggets defense is like 18th, and the ceiling is top 10, depending on what they're able to do with full personnel. A lot of it based off of if they score better, they'll be able to get back and maybe not turn the ball over so damn much, which was a big problem for them last season. In general, where do you think that this team ranks in terms of the hierarchies of the Western Conference and the league, as far as, do you consider this team to be a serious title contender next season?
So I think that, just like backing out, this is again part of the purposes of the tiers. You have a tier 1, a tier 3, 2 4s, 2 5s, assuming health. That's a title level. That's maybe not like an inner circle title contender team, but that is a profile of a team that can make the conference finals and finals. Again, that's assuming health, because Murray and MPJ are like the 2nd and 3rd or 4th best player. So like, if they're not at that level, then no, you're not. But like, assuming health, and with the Clippers, assuming health, big kind of assuming health teams are right there. And then obviously you have Golden State, which you have to start with. And then whatever we think of Phoenix, even if the vibes are bad heading into next season in Phoenix. And then I don't know, who else would you kind of have in that I know I always forget someone when I start ripping team names off. So so I think, I have to get my list, but I think for me, the list of title contenders, I did this on Danny's pod, was wide. Yeah. I think they have more title equity than Dallas.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Like, if you were to ask me to make a season win bet between the two, I might lean Dallas because of the health, but I think Denver's upside is so significantly higher than Dallas is that like, I think they're They are, obviously the Jazz have defaulted on their contention level position,
Yeah.
so that's one spot. The Wolves are gonna be a top 5-ish team in the West, I think.
Yep.
So
it's tough because you really look at it and you go like, well, the Warriors are going to be a top 5 team, and the
Yeah.
Suns brought everybody back. They should be a top 5 team. Oh, and the Nuggets are healthy and they're going to be a top 5 team. Oh, and the Mavericks have Luka. Oh, and the Wolves got Rudy Gobert, and then you're like, all right, so all 5 of those, and then you're looking at like, what if somebody else makes a jump?
What if Zion is healthy and New Orleans figures out how to place together well?
And then there's the Kevin Durant question, which we've talked about on yesterday's show, just about like if he goes to that conference, it's gonna screw up a whole lot of things in terms of it's gonna tilt stuff so dramatically.
I mean, even frankly, the Lakers, if the Lakers somehow pull off a Westbrook for Irving, Clippers. Yeah. Thank you. I mentioned the Clippers as an if healthy team. Oh, Memphis, yes. In Memphis, so that's like 7 or 8 teams that we've already Lakers if they make a Laker trade where they get like good player for not good player.
Right. So, okay. All right, let's go wrap it up with Seth Partnow. Thanks for joining us. If you guys are interested in more of Seth's work, follow him on Twitter at Seth Partnow. It'll be in the episode description. You can also catch his call-in episodes weekly. It's a great show. He always has great guests on, takes audience questions, all sorts of awesome stuff. Seth, thanks so much for coming by.
Absolutely. I am now hungry and want to eat a Built Bar because I didn't eat enough lunch today. And as you were describing it, my tummy rumbled. So
they are both delicious and good for you. So make sure to check out the Built Bars. All right, guys, we'll be back tomorrow with another show. Adam and I'll be back on Friday. Talk about this, that, and the other. Same usual time we're expecting at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. We'll talk to you guys again tomorrow. Thanks for joining us on Locked